Introducing you the ChatGPT API. There are some main headings of ChatGPT API such as Introduction to ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo and Whisper API. ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo. Text DaVinci 003 to GPT 3.5 Turbo. ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo pricing model. Managing tokens of ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo. Why managing tokens in ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo is important. Counting tokens for ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo. Instructing ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo 0301. ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo API. Example use cases. Frequently asked questions. Introduction to ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo and Whisper API. Developers can now integrate ChatGPT and Whisper models into their apps and products through OpenAI API. ChatGPT and Whisper models API are now available, giving developers access to cutting-edge language and speech-to-text capabilities. Through a series of system-wide optimizations, 90% cost reduction achieved for ChatGPT since December. Developers can now use open-source Whisper Large V2 model in the API with much faster and cost-effective results. ChatGPT API users can expect continuous model improvements and the option to choose dedicated capacity for deeper control over the models. ChatGPT is powered by GPT 3.5 Turbo, OpenAI's most advanced language model. Using the OpenAI API, you can build your own applications with GPT 3.5 Turbo to do things like draft an email or other piece of writing, write Python code, answer questions about a set of documents, create conversational agents, give your software a natural language interface, tutor in a range of subjects, translate languages, simulate characters for video games and much more. The ChatGPT model GPT 3.5 Turbo is the same model used in the ChatGPT product. It's also best model for many non-chat use case. Chat models take a series of messages as input and return a model-generated message as output. Although the chat format is designed to make multi-turn conversations easy, it's just as useful for single-turn tasks without any conversations, such as those previously served by instruction following models like Text DaVinci 003. The main input is the messages parameter. Messages must be an array of message objects, where each object has a role, either system, user, or assistant, and content, the content of the message. Conversations can be as short as one message or fill many pages. Typically, a conversation is formatted with a system message first, followed by alternating user and assistant messages. The system message helps set the behavior of the assistant. In the example above, the assistant was instructed with "You are a helpful assistant." The user messages help instruct the assistant. They can be generated by the end users of an application or set by a developer as an instruction. The assistant messages help store prior responses. They can also be written by a developer to help give examples of desired behavior. Including the conversation history helps when user instructions refer to prior messages. In the example above, the user's final question of "Where was it played?" only makes sense in the context of the prior messages about the World Series of 2020. Because the models have no memory of past requests, all relevant information must be supplied via the conversation. If a conversation cannot fit within the model's token limit, it will need to be shortened in some way. An example API response looks as follows. In Python, the assistant's reply can be extracted with response choices 0 message content. Every response will include a finish reason. The possible values for finish reason are stop, API returned complete model output, length, incomplete model output due to max tokens parameter or token limit, content filter, omitted content due to a flag from our content filters. Text DaVinci 003 to GPT 3.5 Turbo. Developers can migrate from Text DaVinci 003 to GPT 3.5 Turbo with only a small amount of adjustment needed to their prompts. That's it. Didn't it really amazing? Because GPT 3.5 Turbo performs at a similar capability to Text DaVinci 003, but at 10% the price per token, we recommend GPT 3.5 Turbo for most use cases. For many developers, the transition is as simple as rewriting and retesting a prompt. For example, if you translated English to French with the following completions prompt. Translate the following English text to French. Text. An equivalent chat conversation could look like. ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo pricing model. It is priced at $0.002 per 1K tokens, which is 10x cheaper than existing GPT 3.5 models. Managing tokens of ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo. Language models read text in chunks called tokens. In English, a token can be as short as one character or as long as one word, e.g., a or apple, and in some languages, tokens can be even shorter than one character or even longer than one word. For example, the string ChatGPT is great is encoded into 6 tokens. ChatGPT is great. The total number of tokens in an API call affects how much your API call costs as you pay per token. How long your API call takes, as writing more tokens takes more time. Whether your API call works at all, as total tokens must be below the model's maximum limit, 4096 tokens for GPT 3.5 Turbo 0301. Both input and output tokens count toward these quantities. For example, if your API call used 10 tokens in the message input and you received 20 tokens in the message output, you would be billed for 30 tokens. Why managing tokens in ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo is important. Each message passed to the API consumes the number of tokens in the content, role, and other fields, plus a few extra for behind-the-scenes formatting. This may change slightly in the future. If a conversation has too many tokens to fit within a model's maximum limit, e.g., more than 4096 tokens for GPT 3.5 Turbo, you will have to truncate, omit, or otherwise shrink your text until it fits. Beware that if a message is removed from the message's input, the model will lose all knowledge of it. Note too that very long conversations are more likely to receive incomplete replies. For example, a GPT 3.5 Turbo conversation that is 4090 tokens long will have its reply cut off after just 6 tokens. Counting tokens for ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo. ChatGPT models like GPT 3.5 Turbo use tokens in the same way as other models, but because of their message-based formatting, it's more difficult to count how many tokens will be used by a conversation. Below is an example function for counting tokens for messages passed to GPT 3.5 Turbo 0301. The exact way that messages are converted into tokens may change from model. Instructing ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo 0301. Best practices for instructing models may change from model version to version. The advice that follows applies to GPT 3.5 Turbo 0301 and may not apply to future models. Many conversations begin with a system message to gently instruct the assistant. For example, here is one of the system messages used for ChatGPT. You are ChatGPT, a large language model trained by OpenAI. Answer as concisely as possible. Knowledge cutoff. Knowledge cutoff. Current date. Current date. In general, GPT 3.5 Turbo 0301 does not pay strong attention to the system message, and therefore important instructions are often better placed in a user message. If the model isn't generating the output you want, feel free to iterate and experiment with potential improvements. You can try approaches like: make your instruction more explicit. Specify the format you want the answer in. Ask the model to think step by step or debate pros and cons before settling on an answer. Beyond the system message, the temperature and max tokens are two of many options developers have to influence the output of the chat models. For temperature, higher values like 0.8 will make the output more random, while lower values like 0.2 will make it more focused and deterministic. In the case of max tokens, if you want to limit a response to a certain length, max tokens can be set to an arbitrary number. This may cause issues. For example, if you set the max tokens value to 5, since the output will be cut off and the result will not make sense to users. ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo API. ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo API has two subheadings. Request body parameters and responses. Request body parameters has two examples below. Model string required. ID of the model to use. Currently, only GPT 3.5 Turbo and GPT 3.5 Turbo 0301 are supported. Messages array required. The messages to generate chat completions for, in the chat format. Temperature number optional defaults to 1. What sampling temperature to use, between 0 and 2. Higher values like 0.8 will make the output more random, while lower values like 0.2 will make it more focused and deterministic. We generally recommend altering this or top P but not both. Top P number optional defaults to 1. An alternative to sampling with temperature, called nucleus sampling, where the model considers the results of the tokens with top P probability mass. So 0.1 means only the tokens comprising the top 10% probability mass are considered. We generally recommend altering this or temperature but not both. An integer optional defaults to 1. How many chat completion choices to generate for each input message? Stream Boolean optional defaults to false. If set, partial message deltas will be sent, like in ChatGPT tokens will be sent as data-only server sent events as they become available, with the stream terminated by a data. Done message. Stop stringer array optional defaults to null. Up to 4 sequences where the API will stop generating further tokens. Max tokens integer optional defaults to inf. The maximum number of tokens allowed for the generated answer. By default, the number of tokens the model can return will be 4096 prompt tokens. Presence penalty number optional defaults to 0. Number between -2.0 and 2.0. Positive values penalize new tokens based on whether they appear in the text so far, increasing the model's likelihood to talk about new topics. Frequency penalty number optional defaults to 0. Number between -2.0 and 2.0. Positive values penalize new tokens based on their existing frequency in the text so far, decreasing the model's likelihood to repeat the same line verbatim. Logit bias map optional defaults to null. Modify the likelihood of specified tokens appearing in the completion. Accepts a JSON object that maps tokens, specified by their token ID in the tokenizer, to an associated bias value from -100 to 100. Mathematically, the bias is added to the logits generated by the model prior to sampling. The exact effect will vary per model, but values between -1 and 1 should decrease or increase likelihood of selection. Values like -100 or 100 should result in a ban or exclusive selection of the relevant token. User string optional. A unique identifier representing your end user, which can help OpenAI to monitor and detect abuse. The example of ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo API is given below. Example use cases. We can use ChatGPT as Linux terminal. We can use ChatGPT for explaining different things. We can use ChatGPT for extracting data from text. We can solve our mathematical questions using ChatGPT. We can play tic-tac-toe game on ChatGPT. Frequently asked questions. Is fine-tuning available for GPT 3.5 Turbo? No, as of 1 Mar 23, you can only fine-tune base GPT-3 models. Do you store the data that is passed into the API? As of 1 Mar 23, we retain your API data for 30 days, but no longer use your data sent via the API to improve our models. Adding a moderation layer. If you want to add a moderation layer to the outputs of the Chat API, you can follow our moderation guide to prevent content that violates OpenAI usage policies from being shown.